Quick test for you. Somebody shows you a photo of a Russian tank sitting in a field. No caption, no markings, nothing. Could you tell me whether that's a T-72, a T-80, or a T-90? Be honest. Unless you're the sort of person who can identify a tank by the shape of its exhaust grill, probably not. And that's not an accident. That confusion is basically the entire origin story of the T-90 rolled into one photograph. Because the T-90, the tank that Vladimir Putin has personally called the best in the world more than once, isn't really a new tank. It's a rebrand. And once you understand the rebrand, everything else about this tank's life makes a lot more sense. The Syrian missile strike that made it internet famous. The Ukrainian battlefield that's been quietly taking it apart for 3 years. All of it traces back to a decision made in a Russian design bureau in the early 1990s, when a tired old Soviet chassis needed a new coat of paint and a better story. So let's get into it. Where the T-90 actually came from, what it's built to do, why it briefly went viral for surviving an American missile, and why Russia's most modern tank has spent this war blowing its own turret off with alarming regularity. Here's the thing almost nobody outside the tank community knows. The T-90 was never designed from scratch. In the late 1980s, Soviet engineers at the Kartsev-Venediktov Design Bureau in Nizhny Tagil were working on a replacement for the aging T-64, T-72, and T-80 lineup, and they had two competing proposals on the table. One was Object 187, a genuinely new tank, redesigned hull, new armor, new engine, the works. The other was Object 188, a T-72B with some upgrades bolted on, cheaper, simpler, faster to build. You can probably guess which one a collapsing, cash-strapped Soviet state chose. Not the good one. Object 188 got the green light and it entered testing as the T-72BU, basically an upgraded T-72 wearing a new fire control system borrowed from the T-80. Nothing wrong with that on paper, except for one small marketing problem that showed up in early 1991. Operation Desert Storm happened, and the T-72, Iraq's tank of choice, got absolutely humiliated on live television. Burning T-72 hulls became the defining image of that war, beamed into living rooms around the planet. And suddenly, nobody buying tanks on the international market wanted anything with T-72 written on the side of it. So the marketing team got to work. The tank was briefly floated as the T-88, which, if you think about it, is not exactly a confidence-inspiring name either. Sounds like a photocopier. Eventually, Boris Yeltsin signed off on something with a bit more punch, and on the 5th of October 1992, by presidential decree, the T-72BU officially became the T-90, Russia's brand new tank for a brand new decade. Except it wasn't new. Same hull family, same gun lineage, same general silhouette as the tank that had just spent a war catching fire on CNN. Russia had, with a single stroke of a pen, solved the public relations crisis without touching the metallurgy. There's a nicer footnote to this story too. The program's chief designer, Vladimir Putin, led the T-90 through its early development years before his death in 1999, and the tank picked up the informal nickname Vladimir in his honor. It's a genuinely respectful bit of tank history. It's also going to look increasingly strange as this video goes on for reasons that have nothing to do with him. Right, so what do you actually get for your money? The main gun is a 125mm 2A46 smoothbore cannon, firing armor-piercing sabot rounds and high-explosive shells depending on what you're shooting at. Standard stuff for a Russian tank of this generation. What's less standard is that the same barrel can also fire a guided missile. The 9M119 Reflex, or its export cousin, the Invar, gets launched straight down the gun tube like a normal round, then steers itself onto target using laser guidance out to several kilometers. It's a genuinely clever bit of engineering, effectively giving a tank crew an anti-tank guided missile capability without needing a separate launcher bolted to the turret. That missile through the barrel trick is only possible because of the other headline feature, the autoloader. Instead of a human loader manually stuffing shells into the breech, which is how every Western tank still does it, the T-90 uses a rotating carousel of ready rounds that feeds the gun automatically. This is why the T-90 gets away with a 3-man crew, driver, gunner, commander, while an Abrams or a Challenger needs 4. one less person to train, feed, and pay, one less person exposed if something goes wrong. Keep that carousel in mind. We're going to come back to it, and it's not going to be good news. For protection, the original T-90 carried Kontakt-5 explosive reactive armor, upgraded blocks bolted onto the turret and hull design to disrupt an incoming shaped charge before it can burn through the base armor. Layered underneath that was the Shtora 1 system, a genuinely underrated bit of kit that combines a laser warning receiver, an infrared jammer, and smoke grenade dischargers. The whole point of Shtora is to mess with the guidance of incoming anti-tank missiles, jamming the laser designator and throwing up smoke fast enough that a wire or laser-guided missile simply loses its lock. It was a direct response to lessons from earlier conflicts, and on paper it's a smart, layered defensive package. On paper, most Russian armor looks smart. The question, as always, is what happens when someone actually shoots at it? The T-90 didn't exist for Desert Storm, so its first real combat test came decades later, in Syria, when the Syrian Arab Army started fielding T-90As in early 2016. And its combat debut produced one of the most watched tank videos of the decade. In February 2016, rebel fighters near Aleppo filmed a wire-guided TOW-missile streaking straight into a T-90's turret. Direct hit, blinding flash, huge cloud of smoke, and when the dust cleared, the tank was still there. The Kontakt-5 armor had detonated the missile's shaped charge before it could punch through, and the crew drove away. The footage went everywhere. It became, almost overnight, proof that Russian armor could shrug off Western anti-tank weapons. Then, a few months later, near the Mall of Farms outside Aleppo, a T-90 took a TOW hit, survived, tried to reverse out of the kill zone, and got hit by a second missile for its trouble. Still didn't die on camera. The legend grew. Here's what the highlight reel left out. Researchers who spent years cataloging footage from the Syrian civil war, going through well over 100 gigabytes of combat video, counted roughly 5 or 6 T-90As quietly destroyed by those same TOW missiles across 2016 and 2017. A handful more were hit and never confirmed one way or the other. 2 were captured intact by rebel forces and pressed into service against their former owners. A third was seized by ISIS in November 2017. Out of roughly 30 T-90As transferred to Syria, that's a serious chunk of the fleet either destroyed or captured, and almost none of it went viral, because there's no algorithm reward for the video where the expensive tank just loses. That pattern, one spectacular survival story doing all the PR work while a quieter list of losses piles up unnoticed, is going to become extremely relevant in about 5 minutes. Russia kept iterating anyway. The T-90A arrived in 2004 with a fully welded turret, replacing the older cast design, a proper thermal sight built around the French Thales camera core, and a new 1,000 horsepower engine. This is the version most commonly nicknamed Vladimir. Then came the big one, development on what became the T-90M Proryv, Russian for breakthrough, started in the early 2010s, went through prototypes and state trials for years, and finally started reaching frontline Russian units around 2020. New welded turret with bustle-stored ammunition. The Kalina digital fire control system, marketed as giving the tank genuine hunter-killer capability. Relit, a third-generation explosive reactive armor replacing the older Kontakt-5. An uprated engine pushing over 1,000 horsepower. At around 46.5 tons, it's roughly 20 tons lighter than a Western main battle tank, which tells you everything about the difference in philosophy. Russia builds tanks to be produced fast, lost without too much guilt, and replaced. NATO builds tanks to survive. Both Putin and Dmitry Medvedev have publicly called the T-90M the best tank in the world. It's the sort of claim that sounds impressive right up until you check what it's actually been doing since February 2022. When the full-scale invasion started, Russia had somewhere around 70 T-90Ms in frontline service. Its most capable tank, in correspondingly small numbers, typically handed to elite formations expected to lead breakthrough assaults. Fitting, given the name. By early 2026, the open-source tracking project Oryx had visually confirmed more than 150 of those T-90Ms destroyed, damaged, abandoned, or captured. Total losses across the whole T-90 family, older T-90As included, ran well past 200. Russia has lost more T-90Ms than it started the war with, which is only possible because Uro-Vanganzavad kept building replacements faster than Ukraine could destroy the last batch. It's not a typo, and it's not really a victory either. It's a factory racing a graveyard. So what's actually going wrong? Remember that autoloader carousel from earlier? It sits in a horizontal ring directly beneath the turret, packed with ready ammunition right around where the crew's legs are. It's an efficient design. It's also a design flaw with a body count, because a single penetrating hit into that ring can set off a chain detonation that blows the entire turret clean off the hull. Open source analysts have taken to calling it the jack-in-the-box effect, and by 2026, it had become the single most consistent way to identify a destroyed T-90M in drone footage. Hull intact, turret sitting somewhere else entirely. Shtora 1, that clever laser-jamming defensive suite we talked about earlier, was built for a very specific threat: laser-guided and wire-guided missiles like the TOW that Syria made famous. It has essentially nothing to offer against the first-person view drone, because an FPV drone doesn't use a laser at all. It's just a camera and an operator with a joystick flying the thing in manually. There's no beam to jam and no lock to break. You cannot electronically warn a tank about a threat that isn't broadcasting anything. And then there's the sanctions problem. The Kalina fire control system's thermal imaging originally leaned on French Thales camera cores, the same Catherine FC technology fitted to those early export T-90S models. Post-2022 sanctions cut that supply chain off, forcing Russian production onto domestic PNMT thermal sites, which multiple reports describe as lower resolution with a ghosting problem in the image. Against genuine third-generation Western thermal optics on an Abrams or a Challenger, that's a first look, first shot advantage handed straight to the other side every single night. Russian crews have adapted the way you'd expect. Thermal camouflage blankets, nicknamed Nikitka, draped over the hull to blur the tank's heat signature from above. Improvised anti-drone cages weld over the turret to trigger FPV warheads early. Field fixes for a problem the tank was never designed to face. Some of the individual loss stories are almost cruelly specific. In January 2024, open-source footage showed a T-90M destroyed by two Bradley infantry fighting vehicles, a design the Pentagon first fielded back in the early 1980s, taking down Russia's supposed flagship tank. A few months later, a Ukrainian mechanic driver from a hunting brigade reportedly crossed open ground under fire to reach an abandoned T-90M, climbed in, and drove it back to Ukrainian lines more or less intact, turning the best tank in the world into a captured trophy without firing a shot. There are less dignified ways for a flagship weapons platform to end its war than that, but not many spring to mind. By early 2026, at least one defense outlet had gone further, reporting that the T-90M appeared to be quietly disappearing from Ukraine's front lines altogether, pulled back into reserve formations. Whether that's genuine conservation of an increasingly precious asset for some future confrontation, or simply a fleet too depleted to keep exposing, is the kind of thing that's hard to know for certain from the outside. Either read isn't exactly a ringing endorsement of the best tank in the world. Now, credit where it's due, because the story doesn't just stop at everything is on fire. Uro-Vanganzavad hasn't slowed down. Production reportedly tripled from around 60 T-90Ms a year before the war to somewhere in the region of 250 to 300 a year by 2025, with leaked planning documents suggesting Russia intends to build or overhaul well over 1,700 T-90M and a new upgraded variant, the T-90M2 Rivok 1, between now and 2036. That new variant reportedly began limited production this year. And in July 2026, open-source imagery appeared to show a T-90M fitted with the Arena-M hard-kill active protection system, a radar-guided setup designed to physically intercept incoming projectiles before they hit, including, Russia claims, some top attack threats. Whether that holds up against a determined drone operator remains to be seen, but it's a genuine attempt to solve the exact problem this video has spent the last 10 minutes describing. And zoom out from Ukraine entirely, and the T-90 is still one of the most successful tank exports Russia has ever produced. India alone has built well over 1,000 of them domestically under the name Bhishma, on top of importing hundreds more directly, and as recently as July 2026, Russia's state arms exporter was in talks to jointly produce an upgraded T-90 MS with New Delhi, Algeria, Iraq, Vietnam, Uganda all field them too. Whether Ukraine's minefields and drone crews have proven about the T-90M specifically, the wider T-90 family remains a genuinely mass-produced, genuinely in-demand piece of hardware. Strip away the branding and what you've got is a tank built on 1980s bones, wearing a name chosen to escape a public relations disaster that got extremely lucky on camera in Syria and extremely unlucky on camera in Ukraine, and whose single most efficient design feature, that autoloader carousel, doubles as its single most catastrophic vulnerability. It's cheap, it's fast to build, it's easy enough to export by the thousand, and every single time it gets tested against a determined, well-equipped opponent, the same story plays out. It survives just long enough to make the highlight reel, right up until it doesn't. A tank renamed to outrun its own reputation, still trying, 3 decades later, to do exactly that. If you want the T-90's smaller, infantry-carrying cousin, go check out our breakdown of the BMP on the channel, because a lot of the same story applies there too. Same era, same doctrine, same brutal audit courtesy of a battlefield nobody designed either vehicle for. That's the T-90. Let us know down in the comments which Russian tank you want broken down next. And if you're not subscribed to Military Hub yet, now's a good time to fix that.